Welcome to the Crypto Cartel. I'm your host, Brus.
And I'm Ed Anderson. Today in the show, we're going to show you exactly why you need to get into crypto. If you've listened to episode 2 of our show, you'll know that crypto is an unseen war between the evil cabal that controls the current fiat system and the alternative and much more pleasant, decentralized, and permissionless crypto universe.
Remember that most people get involved in crypto because they want to make some money. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And Ed and I believe that you need to have a foot in both camps, in the crypto world and the fiat world. And that's so you can hedge your bets and get the upside of both of those things. No one would agree that putting everything into one basket is a good idea. And by the end of today's podcast, you'll see and hear things that maybe you've never considered before. And it's our goal to get you to share this show so you can spark a conversation with the people that you care about, because we believe that you need an alternative, and you need an alternative plan no matter what's happening in the world.
Let's light this rocket.
Well, g'day, Ed. How you doing, mate?
Howdy, Rob. How's my tobacco-chewing alligator wrestling friend?
Pretty good, man. What's happening in your world? Everything go okay?
Oh, yeah, super. Winter is finally starting to kick in here. We finally got our first snowfall. All of you global warming people, I'm sorry. We got winter here. So,
does it get cold there in Minnesota?
Yeah, right. Surprise. For some people, like us people in Minnesota, we want the global warming. Bring it on. Come on, man. But yeah, so winter is starting to kick in here. So we got our first snowfall. So in a couple of weeks, I should have some nice video. I'll go outside with the camera and do a video from outside. And
yeah, I'd love to see that. It's a bit of a novelty here in Australia because it does snow like down the Southern Highlands and stuff like that, but nothing like where you're from in that part of the world. And it's kind of funny, you're talking about it being freezing cold there and snowing, and here I am talking to you with a sunglasses tan on my face because the weather is so hot here in Australia. Yeah. It's really good. Yeah, I'm excited to be doing this episode with you. I'm always excited to be doing these podcasts. This is going to be a ripper of a show, as we say here in Australia, because I know that people who are watching this podcast and listening to this for the first time, if they're new to crypto, they're going to hear things that they might not have heard before. And there's going to be some high eyebrows, always like, really? And there's going to be some words uttered under their breath for sure that those words might be, come on, man, or maybe that sounds like a little bit of bullshit. But I can assure you, ladies and gentlemen, if you're a skeptic, I want you to just to keep an open mind here and just keep an open mind to learning new things and to creating new opportunities for yourself, because this is the reason I love crypto so much, and I love doing this so much, is because every day presents a new opportunity that takes a little bit of time to look at and to analyze and to work out whether or not it's actually worth getting involved in. But that said, I've also got other interests that are outside of crypto, and that also ensures that I'm hedging my bets against worst case scenarios. I've got other investments, other business, other things that I do. This morning, I met one of my friends that I haven't seen for quite some time, and I kind of bumped into her on the morning walk, and I said, hey, I'll walk with you. And we walked together for about 45 minutes, and by the end of that, we'd had her business idea completely fleshed out and taking that to the next level. So I'm always out there hustling and creating opportunities for myself, but I don't get to do that unless I've got some element of recurring income in my life. And I'm using crypto to do that, and I'm using crypto to hedge against other things where I'm making good money in crypto. So I take that out of crypto, put it back into real world businesses. I've got a bunch of other things that I've got an interest in, my photography business, a couple of other podcasts that make a bunch of money as well. So I'm getting cash flow and revenue streams from about 5 or 6 different places at the moment. And my goal, I've kind of reassessed and looked at my goals for 2022, is to build myself 10 to 15 income streams by the middle of next year. And not all of those things are going to enable me to retire, but if I can just use the concept of being just a little bit richer every day, where I've got maybe $100 more than I had yesterday in recurring income that's still coming at me and it's still happening for me. And that happens both in the online world, the crypto world, and the offline physical world as well. And I think it's really important that you have a bit of diversification like that, because there's so many experts out there spruiking this deal or that deal or this property or that business. And the idea is that you play a little bit in all of those camps. What about you, Ed? Are you into a few different things? Tell us about your thinking.
Yeah, I'm so glad. Good for you, Rob. I'm glad to hear you're spreading your risk around. That is such a great idea. Yeah, I'm the same as you, Rob. I work pretty much full time in the crypto space these days. Building my recurring incomes. But I also have a bunch of other little things happening. Stocks, property, and stuff like that. But I don't have a business like you, though, per se. So I'm going to get a little personal here. You don't have to answer if you don't want, Rob. But can I ask, what's most profitable for you?
Crypto.
Okay.
Crypto is always the most profitable. And I think that's a loaded question as well, right? Because you might have a successful business that employs 10 or 15 people, but that business is going to take 60 hours of your week. Is that profitable? Or I've got these crypto investments over here, or I'm working these stock investments, or I've got this property portfolio that make me a much lesser percentage in revenue amounts over there, but the amount of time that I spend with them is almost nothing. So which one is the most profitable for me? Well, in time and actual cash flow is crypto. So I use the leverage that I get with the time. So it's not so much the money that concerns me. And I can say that now because I've reached that point in my life. Previously, it was all about the money, right? Where I didn't have enough cash flow. I didn't have enough of those things. So it's more about the time for me now. And crypto has given me the time to explore these other things and not rush at every opportunity that I see like a crazy person. So what I try and do is I try not to touch the earnings that I have from crypto. What I do is I let them compound. I let them grow. So I've got my monthly outgoing costs that I have in my life, just paying rent and eating food and entertainment and paying bills and things like that. I've got those costs. But beyond that, I try not to touch anything. I'm living well inside the means that I have. And the success that I've had in crypto, the danger of having all of this money really quickly is very tempting to go and increase your lifestyle and to go out there and buy some widgets or things you just don't need. So I definitely haven't done that because I've reached to the point in my life where I just don't really want for anything. I'm a pretty sort of relaxed character in that sense. But if I do need some money and I need to access something because I need to purchase something. So the other day in the business, we purchased a drone, for instance. So there's something we've been talking about for a little while, but the drone is not a small amount of money, right? The thing was 7,700 Australian dollars. So for a DJI Mavic 3, the latest and greatest, most expensive thing you can buy, that's how much it was. And so what I did is I cleared out a little bit of my crypto position and I bought some Bitcoin. I send that across to Nexo and I borrow against my crypto. So I have borrowings, not earnings. So there's no tax implication of what's actually going on there. So you don't pay tax on things that you borrow. You only pay tax on what you earn. So there's no declaration of profit there. So what I do is I get to have my cake and eat it too. So and then I've purchased something that will be integrated into our business. So I'm not purchasing some random piece of equipment that is not going to do anything for us. This piece of equipment will help us make more money. So that's a way that I look at to say, well, this is something we've wanted to do for a while, and it's a way to invest into the business. And I can write off all of that expense into my business, even though the money that I've given to myself is a loan. I can still write off that drone against my business expenses because it's a cost of doing business and it's part of doing business as well. So for me, that methodology is a time-tested strategy, right? Like so many people that borrow against the assets that they actually have to get into the next deal. It's really no different to borrowing against a property that you might have to get into the very next property deal. So you buy a property, an investment property, you get some great capital appreciation and you're going to draw down on some equity to get into the next deal. The difference with doing that with crypto is the frequency and the amounts. So typically with a property, you're probably only going to do that every 4 or 5 years, or maybe only once in the lifetime of that property. and you're doing that with a larger sum of money to actually get a deposit to get to your next deal. But with crypto, I'm doing that with smaller sums of money, and I'm doing that more frequently. And I've got the recurring income coming from me for the other channels to cover off the cost of that loan as well. So it's a really good strategy. It's a time-tested strategy that works in the physical world just as well as it does in the crypto and the digital world. And I really like that. And it just gives me the flexibility and the leverage to get in and out of deals as quickly and as frequently as I want to. And I don't have the velocity of deals going on that I once did in my life, because it was all about the deal for me and all about the sale for me. But these days, it's kind of dialed back a little bit because I've just got a bit more financial freedom because of crypto, which is really good. What about you, Ed? How do you do it all, man?
Wow. Okay. Well, let's go from big to small. Okay. I'm going to make a few statements and I'm going to ask you your opinion on it. Okay. Okay. First, the Fed here in the U.S., like all reserve banks, is printing money into freaking oblivion. That's a fair statement, wouldn't you say?
Oh my God.
Biggest understatement since Noah said it looks like rain. Okay. But if that is the case, then we are all subject to the worst tax of all, which is inflation. Now, here in the U.S., it's starting to run away. Okay. If it keeps going and interest rates rise, then people will very quickly find themselves upside down in their mortgages and repayments, especially since inflation has devalued the dollars you have. You know, think of a public servant, like a police officer or a fireman or someone in the military. They don't really have any real capacity to earn more money. And if a basket of goods has gone up by 30% a year, they'll have less disposable income and their savings will be eaten away. It really is a doomsday scenario. But think of this. If the price of Bitcoin rallies by 20x in the next 2 years, which it may do, and you just take 5% of your savings and buy Bitcoin now, you'll have 100% more when you hit that target. Now, even if it takes 5 or 6 years to hit that target, you'll be much better off than you are today. And 5% of your assets is not that much, to put at risk, right? That's a reasonable allocation. All right, so sure, there's a chance that it goes down by 5%. But look, if inflation is running at 15% plus per month, you'll lose that 5% much faster. And there's no chance you're ever going to recover it. So what about you, Rob? Are you seeing the same things in Australia that we're seeing here in America?
Yeah, man, it is definitely the same, but not to the same extent. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, this whole podcast is about why you need to get into crypto and why you need a hedge against all of these things. And Ed's talking about inflation there, and inflation is the most unfair tax of all. First of all, it's a hidden tax. And the other thing that I would say about it being unfair is that 99 out of 100 people, almost everybody, doesn't understand how inflation works. They just think that the government printing money and buying infrastructure and building this and creating jobs and all the good news stories that governments spruik around the world gives the appearance of prosperity. But the alternative methodology that governments can use is to tax their constituents. And if the government came to you and started taxing you for the projects that they wanted to run, how happy do you think you would be about that? Because the amount of tax revenue that they would have to collect from you would be somewhere in the vicinity of 70 to 80% of everything that you earn in order for them to pay for what it is that they need to pay for. So instead of taxing you, what they do is issue bonds, and the reserve banks of the world go ahead and buy those bonds, and the other foreign governments of the world, like the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party, buy the bonds, and then they owe that, they get that percentage on that bond, and the government gets to print the money for themselves. So here in Australia, they print money as well, but it's different. It's not to the same scale as what you guys have there in the United States. I think economies have been managed a little bit better here. Although if you look at the national debt clock for Australia, it's running away like a hockey stick. It's just going to the moon. It's unbelievable. But when you overlay that to the US national debt clock. That's nothing really in comparison. But on a per capita basis, it's just as bad. So we see the same thing happening here in Australia. But inflation here in Australia is always a good news story because they measure inflation as a basket of goodies, as you mentioned, and CPI. But that basket of goodies inflation is completely under control. And if you and I sit on the couch over there and just watch Netflix and play video games all day, because the only thing we need to buy is a couple of cans of Coke, a little bit of popcorn and some chips and maybe some dinner and some takeaway every time. And the cost of those things really hasn't accelerated. So it's not until you get outside of your house and get outside of those things and start having to purchase other products or services that you'll recognize that inflation has really taken hold in the economy. And housing, which I want to talk about a little bit later in the podcast, is an example of that as well. But look, one of the things that's happened here in Australia in the last 12 to 18 months is small businesses have been totally crushed. And that's because of all the lockdown rules and laws. And here in Australia, it's been a lot worse than many parts of the world, I think, because the government made a decision to go really hard with this stuff. And then governments, unfortunately, rarely backtrack on what it is that they make a decision about because they don't want to look like idiots. And unfortunately, they went all the way down this path and destroyed literally thousands of small businesses in the process. And two of my businesses have pretty much closed shop. One of them, one of them is still a little bit viable. But since I pivoted into crypto, I kind of look at it and think, well, I don't really need to bother doing that. Could I be bothered going back and doing that? And the reality is I can't be bothered. I can still do it if clients come to me and customers come to me. I'll still provide those services for them. I'm happy to do that, but I'm not actively seeking customers anymore. I just don't need to do that anymore. And, earlier in the year 2021, if you're listening to this podcast in the future, it's the end of the year now, but earlier in the year, it really highlighted to me that I needed an alternative plan, especially when the cash flow for my businesses completely stopped because I could no longer swap my time for money in the places that I was actually earning that money because I was providing physical services for people, and I couldn't do that, of course, because of the lockdowns and whatnot. It was a blessing in disguise for me, but at the time, it's pretty stressful. It's very, very stressful when that's happening, and you don't know where the next dollar's coming from. And I used to have a pipeline of anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000 a month worth of business, have fairly minimal outgoing costs in my business. So I get to provide a lot of the services with my team. So I have really solid margins, but that just went poof and gone, completely gone. So when I decided to get back into crypto, I decided that I would create recurring income streams there for myself. And that's the alternative plan, right? Is that alternative income stream and the recurring revenue that I create enables me to go back and explore things in the real world as well. And it lets me fund other ideas and other opportunities, not so much with money, but more with my time. Because whenever you've got a business, particularly a small business, most people will tell you that it takes up all of your week. And the last thing you want to be thinking about when you're taking a break on the weekend is working on another small business. So I've got the luxury of a bit more time now. And the crypto side of things has given me the fuel that I need I need that fuel. I need the money to get into other opportunities. And, these opportunities range across a bunch of different things. So stuff as simple as staking stable coins at places like cakedefi.com. Really simple. You're getting a 59% APR on USDT over there. And so I've got USDT, which is a stable coin. So there's no directional risk of price going up, price going down. The crypto market has taken a tumble in the last couple of weeks. And I've lost out pretty hard on some of the crypto that I've been holding, but that staking in those stable coins have remained exactly the same. And I'm still getting that 59% APR. Where can I get that in the real world? I can't take that same amount of money, that same US dollar value money, and put it in a bank here in Australia and get a 59% return. I just can't. It's not possible. And crypto and DeFi give you the opportunity to do that. So I've also got a bunch of other things that I speculate on as well on price. Sometimes the price moves in my favor. Sometimes I get carved up. But the strategy for me is not to worry too much about the day-to-day activity. I describe it, it's like a tide, right? Tide goes up, tide goes down, tide goes up, tide goes down. And over a period of time, the tide gets higher and higher because Bitcoin's pulling everything up. So that's a really good thing. It's hard not to look at it from the day-to-day perspective, but the strategy is to build a runway of cash flow for myself that goes into the future and it lasts the rest of my life. And crypto is enabling me to do that. So every time I get into one of these opportunities, when I stake some coin over here, or I get another master node, or I'm doing some mining over there, whatever I'm doing, I look at that as another brick in the runway, another slice of that runway, and that runway is going to last forever and gives me enough time into the future. And my opinion about money has changed a lot in the last couple of years. I feel like it's not so much about the things that I can get or the things that I want in a material sense. It's more about time for me, and that runway equates to years of time. So I look and I think, well, if I get involved in that today for 1,000 USD, and in 5 years' time, I look at their calculators and their forecast, I can see that $1,000 today turns into $16,000 in 5 years' time. So something as simple as Cake DeFi, you can look at their calculators, go to their staking pools, and you can see stuff like that. It's very, very simple and easy to do. So if I stake $1,000 a week for the next 52 weeks, in 5 years' time, every week for 52 weeks, I'm going to collect on $16,000. Not bad. But you're also speculating on the price a little bit as well. You know, if the price is going to go up, awesome, I'll get more. If the price goes down, well, I'm going to have significantly less. But I don't need that $1,000. So I can afford to put $1,000 a week into these things to build myself that amount of runway. And who needs $16,000 a week in their life to live? Not a lot of people. That's a pretty good lifestyle if you've got that. So that's an example of some of the things that I get involved in that have some directional risk associated with them, but they also give me the runway that I actually need. And I'm doing these things in shorter time frames, in medium time frames, and longer ones as well. A long time frame for me is about 5 years, because what I'm trying to do is to bring in the time frames a little bit shorter, create the recurring income to build the runway for the more longer term ones. And since I've only been back in the crypto space for the last 6 months or so, it's taking a little bit of time to get some momentum for myself. So it's more about, for me personally, it's about the recurring income and the additional opportunities that enables for me to create the continuous runway of cash flow. So the example of meeting my friend this morning, talking with her for 45 minutes about a business idea and an opportunity. Now I can go and explore that and see what would be involved and how does she need help? You know, will she pay me to be a service provider? Would I take that on board, or would I be a partner in that business, or how can I help get that done? Previously, I couldn't do that because I didn't have an alternative plan, but now I've got an alternative plan. And I think that right there is kind of the crux of the podcast, right? That's what we're trying to get across to people, that you need an alternative. You need some other version of cash flow for yourself. And crypto for me is just like it's a virtually instantaneous tap. There's no time in history where you've really been able to be the bank on behalf of people playing in the crypto space, because the banks don't play in this space. But here you can take a little bit of money that you've got and become the bank and stake it and get great rewards as a result of that. It's a really cool thing.
You know, for a guy who is a beach bum at heart, you know, you're a really smart dude. You know, but that's awesome, Rob. I'm on exactly the same path as you. You know, when it comes to cash flow and recurring the income. You know, now I'm building that never-ending stream of income and taking the profits and tipping them back into stablecoin projects to remove the directional risk that you talked about, right? And once I see a yield from the stable coins, I take those profits and use that to speculate. That way, I'm preserving my capital and not risking what I've gained. Okay, there is simply nothing else in the world that enables you to do something like this with a small amount of money that will grow into something very significant over a pretty short period of time, other than crypto. Right? Now, recurring income is the key, and building that with crypto is not as hard as you might think. Now, you just need the right people around you to help you along the way, right? Now, you and I are in the crypto cartel, and I encourage everyone to join crypto cartel and get wonderful ideas from there. But having the right people around you to share ideas and to help and to help you avoid all the mistakes that trip most people up, right? Always try to learn from other people's mistakes. That should be a bumper sticker somewhere, right? Always learn from other people. So surround yourself with good people. What do you think, Rob?
Yeah, man, you nailed that. I think you nailed that. And don't be one of the things that I've seen in the last couple of weeks. Actually, it's a pretty interesting point. I just want to, before we pull to a break here quickly, Ed, I just want to ask you a question. Actually, is one of the things that I've seen in the last few weeks is people are asking me about how did you do this or how did you do that or how do you get started here and what do I do there? And I would share this information with people and check back in with them a couple of weeks later or a few days later and go, hey, what's the GO? You know, have you done what we talked about? Is everything okay? And 10 out of 10 of them hadn't done anything. And I was scratching my head thinking, you asked me and I told you, and you have no idea the pain I went through and the loss that I suffered to be able to just say to you, oh yeah, man, just do it like that.
Yeah.
You just forget, you know, like it's kind of like you go down the mechanics with your car and you turn the key and he like puts his ear near the bonnet and he goes, yeah, man, this is what's wrong with it. It's going to take this amount of money to fix and it'll take this long. Do you want me to fix it for you? And you're standing there going, what do you mean, dude? You didn't even lift up the bonnet of the car. How do I know if you're right? And he's like, well, I've been doing this for 25 years. Do you want me to fix it or not? And you pay a little bit of lip service to his abilities to do that and you forget that. So to your point, surround yourself with people, like-minded people that have done this before, and to make this happen, definitely do that. But don't pay lip service to what they tell you because they've worked incredibly hard to get to that point and they've probably given not just a pound of flesh, they might have given their firstborn child to actually know that information that they're giving to you. I don't know. What do you think about that, Ed?
Well, yeah, duh, right? That's the only word I can think of. Duh. Listen, this whole crypto phenomenon, first of all, it's pretty new, right? And a lot of people know the buzzword. Everyone knows Bitcoin. You know, they don't. Then that's it. That's the extent of what they know, and they don't bother to learn the other thing. And then they hear the little stories about how someone put $1,000 into some little cryptocurrency a year ago, and now they're a millionaire. So they hear those stories, you know, and I think they equate them with like people winning the lottery. Oh, they just got lucky, you know, that kind of thing. But other than that, when you start talking about the things that we already talked about in this podcast, this is, you know, life-changing stuff. But you have to change habits. You know, we're basically attacking people's view of reality, right? And when you're breaking someone's view of reality, it's uncomfortable, you know, because people get in the comfort zone. Now, I know that I shouldn't have eaten so much mashed potatoes and gravy at Thanksgiving, okay? But, you know, that's my comfort food. So I know intellectually what I should be doing, but you have to overcome that. So you have to adopt new habits. So it's a little bit like, you know, if you want to quit smoking, if you want to lose weight, you know, you got to change your way of thinking, right? And the brain is kind of wired. You spend a lifetime growing up in the traditional fiat system, right? And now you might know intellectually that the crypto space is a smarter alternative. And you listen to our podcast and you kind of get it. Okay, that makes sense. But then, okay, now you quit smoking for an hour. Now you got to quit smoking for a day. Now you got to quit smoking for a week, right? You got to take the next step, right? You got to follow through. And you might need to hear this message several times before you actually do it. It might take you a few attempts before you finally quit smoking, before you actually succeed. That doesn't mean you stop doing it. You keep making run it because you know what you should be doing. I think when people listen to us, they understand it. They say, yeah, okay, that makes sense. I get it. You know what? I'm going to do that too. But then they have to get up in the morning and go to their regular job. They get back in their old routine and they got to go to the bank and get their dollars out of the bank. You know, and so it takes a little bit of effort to break your routine. Anyway, you asked. You got to be careful when you ask me questions like that, Rob. I'll go on too long.
No, I think you nailed it, man. You know, you have a cognitive bias towards the things that are easy, and it's just human nature to move towards things that are easy and away from things that are hard or difficult, that are going to cause lots of problems for you. And if you're trying to learn something about crypto and you're a little bit of a skeptic and you're hearing people like you and me talk about this stuff and we're saying that, hey, I'm getting 59% on my money over here and there's no directional risk. And that's like a simple, easy way of doing something like that. They're like, what?
Can't be right. Can't be
what?
true.
Can't be true.
Yeah.
Can't be true. What are you talking about? Hey, let's take a little break here and come on back. I want to talk about the property market and the madness of that here in Sydney. We'll be right back. Well, Ed, I don't know about you, mate, but where I live here in Australia, the property market is totally and completely out of control. We talked a little bit before in the podcast about inflation, and I think part of this is related to inflation. Part of it's related to supply and demand. Part of it's related to low interest rates, but a big part of it is complete and utter stupidity from the actual market. And that's got to do with supply and demand. And that for me is a hell of a problem. The fundamental basis of a free society is having somewhere that you can call your own. They call it, I'm not sure what they call it there in the States, but they call it the Great Australian Dream, to own your own home here in Australia. And I'm certain that the same sort of thing would be true in virtually any country in the world. But the craziness of the property market, listen to this statistic, which I looked up. I actually wrote the content for this podcast a couple of weeks ago, and the numbers that I had, I looked before this show, and I thought I'd double check that to make sure I haven't said the wrong thing. But the median house price, which means the middle house price of all the sales that have happened in the last 12 months is up 30% from the last year. And the median house price here in Australia, or here in Sydney rather, is $1.4 million. Let me say that again. A median house price is $1.4 million. So again, it comes back to that adage that if you and me, Ed, are going to sit over there and play Call of Duty on the couch all day and watch Netflix when we're bored of that, and then go back to playing video games and eating pizzas and drinking Cokes, it's probably not a problem. Inflation doesn't really affect us. A can of Coke's $4. A pizza's still $20. It was $20 10 years ago. It's the same. The prices haven't changed much. But 20 years ago, the average price of a property was not $1.4 million. The price of this apartment that I rent here was probably somewhere in the vicinity of about $500,000 to $600,000. But you'd be lucky to get less than about $950,000 for this thing now. The thing's doubled in value over the last 10 years. But has the property doubled in value? No, the value of money has come down because of inflation and because of the complete and total incompetence and mismanagement of governments, especially the Australian government, just printing money, thinking that that's actually going to solve the problem and giving us the appearance of prosperity so they get actually elected again. It's just ridiculous. So the other side of it is homeowners have a hard time getting into the market, especially first homeowners. Who can afford what young person can afford a mortgage for $1.4 million? It's just unbelievably ridiculous because the value of wages hasn't gone up, and investors are also locked out of the market as well because the amount of equity that I can pull down out of the existing property that I've got to get into the new property doesn't marry up. I need more money to get into a new property because the value of these things has gone up considerably, but then you find yourself in the catch-22 situation because rents haven't increased either. So I've got to pull down more money from the existing properties that I've got, but I'm not going to cover the cost of that mortgage because the rents haven't happened at all. So first home buyers are locked out of the market. Investors are being locked out of the market. So who is the market? What's happening? And then inflation is going off the charts, and the government here in Australia is printing money like nothing before. And if you don't believe me, just have a look at the link in the show notes, and I'll put the link to the Australian debt clock, and that'll give you some idea of how the Australian government has solved the so-called problem that we've had in the last 12 to 18 months by just printing money, and giving it away in a socialist society just for free. If you draw a comparison with the ridiculousness of the property market, and it's the only real way that I can describe. It's just ridiculous, unbelievably ridiculous. And you draw the comparison with crypto, you can get something that's pretty interesting because we're trying to compare what we should get involved in. And we need an alternative plan. And this whole podcast is about an alternative plan and why you should get into crypto and why you need to pay attention to it and why you need an alternative. Maybe property is your alternative. Maybe you can find better deals elsewhere. But look, if you could get a 10% annual yield after everything was paid for in your property, so you had enough of a deposit to negate your actual outgoing costs, and you've got enough rent to cover the costs that you have and have a little bit left over, and you made a 10% clip on your money every year, most people would say that that's actually a pretty good deal. But the problem is trying to actually make those numbers work in an overcooked market that is driven by inflation is very, very, very hard. And there's plenty of people out there that make it work. Plenty of people. And plenty of people that do really well out of property development, property investing, flipping properties, renovating properties. I'm not here to bash property. Property is an awesome vehicle to create wealth. It's an amazing vehicle to create wealth. But if you can get 10% out of your money, you'd be doing well in property. But here we are saying that you can get 59% at Cake DeFi this afternoon if you want. Why would you bother with property? Why would you spend a second risking any of your money with a tenant, with people not paying their rent, with things that go wrong, with all sorts of randomness that's out there? It's just crazy. And the haters of crypto and the lovers of property might say, well, you get a 30% capital appreciation over 12 months. And I highlighted that, right? So the median house price here in Sydney has gone up by 30% in the last 12 months. And yeah, that's a good result. But if I'm getting 59% APY on my money and I'm not getting that capital appreciation, that's still a pretty good trade-off as well. So I don't know about you, Ed, but I'm hard pressed, man, trying to find something that gives me a 10% yield in crypto. And if
I hear you, and you know what? I happen to know that what's going on in Sydney there financially. I do keep tabs of what's going on there. It's amazing what's going on with the property. It's just it's mind-boggling, especially when you're considering that you can fit half the population of Australia into your average size rugby field. No, just kidding. But I do know it's when you look at the numbers, and people are buying these properties because they think, oh, the mortgage rate, the rates are so low. I'm getting almost free money from the bank. Well, yeah, we'll wait until rates start going up. At some point, we're going to pay a price for the inflation. Inflation is a real thing. You got to start learning about that. Anyway, so we had the same thing going on here. A couple of months ago, we had the Case-Shiller Index out, which gauges the housing market here, and it was up 27% year over year, and that's an average throughout the country. Of course, if you go to different parts of the country, it varies dramatically, but that's a big average, 27%, but I'm doing so here in the US, we're doing the same things. So after being in crypto full time for the last year or so, I don't see anywhere else you can get the types of returns that we get. As an example, you and I are getting 300% all day long as our bread and butter, right? And then we're collecting APYs sometimes of 5 to 10,000 plus percent. Okay, and then in some instances, we're collecting 50 to 60% APR on stable coins. And
let me just jump in there for a second, Ed. For the people that are listening to this and hearing these numbers for the first time, I said right at the start there'll be some high eyebrows and some mumbling under your breath going, oh, what a load of shit. But this is the reality of crypto, right? And these are not scams. This is completely these are like the boring things. If you want to start talking about the speculative things that could look like a rug pull or hey man, that looks a little bit scammy to me. I don't know about that. What Ed's talking about here on these ones here are the most boring regular versions of crypto. And when people get into crypto, they're like, I want to get like this many thousands of percentages on my money. And it's like, listen, man, just check fire there, because go back to property or go back to shares or go and try and beat the S&P 500 every year and try and get 10% more than that. You'll be hard pressed making that happen for yourself. So just know, ladies and gentlemen, that what we're talking about is regular, everyday stuff here in the crypto space. This is not some BS, and we'll put some links down below where you can check that out for yourself. Sorry, Ed, you were on a bit of a roll there, but I had to jump in and say that.
No, I love it. And also it's probably important just to remind people, we're not financial advisors. We're not here giving you financial advice. We're just a couple of regular dudes making our way in the world, sharing you our experience, in the crypto market. And take it for whatever it's worth. But DeFi is the future of finance. And you don't have to Google very far to find the things that we're talking about. The trick to all this, if there is a trick, is to start small and figure out exactly how to get into these deals and then all the way out of them. Trying to understand it all can be a challenge if you try to do it all. It is like drinking out of a fire hose, right? So instead of bending your brain around all of that, just start really, really small. Go through the process, prove that it does what it says it's going to do on the cereal box, and then add your position as you build your confidence. Crypto is easy once you're established, and you never stop learning, which is one of the things that I really love about it. But there's a famous saying, one of my favorite movies every year. Yeah, I know this is corny, but I like to watch The Polar Express, that Christmas movie. And toward the end, and toward the end of the movie, he says, where the train is going is not important. The important thing is to get on the train. And I love that phrase. The important thing is, just do it. I hate to use a Nike commercial, might be copyright issues there. You find something, start small, and you will learn as you go. Don't worry about understanding everything before you take a step. I mean, what do you think, Rob?
No, you're exactly right. I was looking through my Instagram feed as I was watching some stuff the other day, and one of the things I saw was, what would you do if you had to start again? Well, the very first thing was, it was a series of swiping things. The very first thing was, I'd go and get a job. I'd go and get a job. You swipe, and he goes, that the job would give me the time that I need to go and get an education. Swipe. I'd get an education in learning how to get into crypto, how to trade, how to drop ship, how to do anything online that didn't require me to be at it nonstop, because I've got a job that is going to feed me, that's going to give me the money that I need to get into something like this. And one of the great things about crypto that I love so much about it is you don't need a huge amount of money. You don't need to be investing $1,000 a week of recurring income like I'm doing or something like that. You can just start right where you are today with exactly what you've got, and just begin with a tiny amount of money and put it in there, understand the processes of getting into it and getting out. As you say, I think there's nothing more important than that, because you'll look at these projects where you get a hot tip from someone and you're like, oh, that looks awesome, but I really understand what I'm getting into. And then you have these old-fashioned Warren Buffett things in your head saying, I don't get involved in things I don't understand. The reality is I don't need to understand every single little intricacy of what's going on. If I buy Google shares today, what does Google do with my money? I don't know. I just hope the stock price goes up. I don't have to understand the intricacies of what Google does with the revenue that they raise from the stock market. So what it means to me is that I just can't think of a single reason why you wouldn't give this a go. Why you could take a small amount of money and buy some gold, I suppose, or buy some shares or some version of property in the stock market through a fund. There's ways to get involved in all of those things with a small amount of money as well. But the issue with that is that you're in no control of that. You're at the mercy of all of these other outside factors. And for me personally, recurring income is the name of the game. And you can't really create recurring income with those sorts of things. You can, but not in the same way as you can do that with crypto, and then removing your directional risk from it as well. Because the problem with traditional things is you're just at the mercy of markets. So if I can get involved, get huge APR, APYs, remove my directional risk and create recurring income all at the same time, I can have my cake and I can eat it too, as the saying goes, right? And if I'm creating recurring income out of it, that gives me the fuel that I need to take into something that's maybe a little bit more speculative, or take the profits that I'm getting out of those deals and then put them into something where I'm making more profits, and then take the profits out of that and then speculate. So I'm preserving what I'm getting. I'm not just trying to shoot at every target that's coming in front of me. I'm being really methodical in the way that I'm actually using it. So let me give you a quick example, Ed, and then we'll throw to the next segment, mate. Is I recently got into this platform called VVS from crypto.com, and VVS stands for very, very simple finance. So it's a DeFi platform that crypto.com put together. And when I came across this deal, it had an APY of 324 million %. So when you see these projects, right, you see them and you're like, oh, that looks pretty cool. What's that all about? And the first thing you do is check and make sure it's not a scam. And I checked and I saw that it's coming from crypto.com, one of the biggest companies in the world. All looks legit, all looks pretty good. Do I really understand what's going on? No. Do I know how to get in? Yes. Do I know how to get out? Yes. Why don't I just put a couple of bucks in there and see what happens? And then as I'm doing that, I'm going to learn about it through the process of doing. So that's what I did. The APY has pulled back to 2,000% or so now, a little bit less. But I got into the deal, and then the price of the thing crashed really, really hard.
And that's what
I lost a big clip of what I put into it. So I put in $4,100 US. The price crashed, and the value of my asset ended up being, at the bottom point, it was like $700. And I was like, well, how low can the limbo go? That's about as low as it goes, right? You know, I'm worried about suffering an impermanent loss where it goes beyond zero, right? And
that's when I got in, by the way.
Yeah.
It's true. I'm sorry.
So what we're getting into is we're getting into mining and staking. So that's what VVS is.
Yeah.
And so when the price crashed, I was like, oh man, I lost all of that money. But that was not money that I was willing to lose, because I'm never willing to lose any money, because I never want to lose any money on any deal. I don't subscribe to that principle of get involved with only the amount of money you're willing to lose. I don't believe that. I believe you should never lose any money at any time, because I treat my money as if I would treat somebody else's. If someone was going to give me some cash to invest in my business or do something like that, I'm going to do everything humanly possible not to lose it. Just because it's mine, it doesn't mean I'm willing to lose it. I don't subscribe to that attitude at all. So I was pretty upset that had actually happened. But then I realized and recognized pretty quickly that, hey, we got this spectacular APY that's not going to last forever, but that's going to negate some of the losses. But I'm actually mining these VVS tokens as well at the same time. Now, the price crashed because the whole crypto market crashed, and the price stayed down there. And as it stayed down there, I've actually, in the process of it staying there, I've mined about 35 to 40% more than what I've started with. So if anything, I want the price to stay down there a little bit longer. Even if the price didn't bounce back to my point of entry, over a period of time, I will mine so much VVS that I'll mine my way back to health, if you like. It's one kind of analogy. I'll mine my way back to the point of entry. But now the price doesn't have to go back to point of entry, because I've mined 35 to 40% more than what I've started when the price was low. So the price only needs to get back to about 3/4 of the entry price. So once it hits the entry price, I'll be ahead by 35 to 40%. And then if the price runs away beyond that and we go long in this position and I'm speculating on the price as well, it's awesome. So one of the things that I've done here is I've hedged against this. So whenever I'm going to get involved in something where I'm speculating on the price, which is what I'm doing, right? So I put $4,000 on this thing thinking it's going to go to the moon because I'm in it brand new and early. And when I did, it really took off quickly in the first couple of days, but then the price collapsed and I got bitten hard by it. So the hedge against that there is I can't go short in this market because I'm long in this trade. If you looked at it like that, I'm long in the deal. The hedge against it is the huge APY that is getting paid on the compounding amount, and it's also giving me more tokens as I go. So I'm mining more tokens. So those things are a hedge against all of that stuff. So I don't like speculating on things that have directional risk, but if I've got a hedge against those things, then I can do that. What about you, Ed? You said that you got into it. Do you speculate on those other things? What do you think?
Well, I mean, speculating is a loaded word, right? It depends on what you mean by it. Now I got into it because you told me to. No. Well, seriously, Rob and I share ideas all the time, and we trust each other to look into things. So, he's not going to be stupid about the things he gets into. I'm not going to be stupid about things I get into. So when he tells me to look at it, I don't get into it just because he tells me, but I know that he looked at it seriously. But then I got kind of lucky because it took me time to, you have to set up the account, do your KYC. I didn't have an account at crypto.com, so it took me a few more days to get into it. So by the time I finally got into it, it was a week later. So I ended up getting in on the dip, but it's almost irrelevant over the course of time, right? When you look at the APY on that guy, if you get cut in half, who cares? I mean, one of the things that I like to tell people who, when I was a trader, and to tell people to dramatize the point of risk management, I would say, listen, when you get into a stock, the most you can lose is 100%. Right? but the amount of money you can make potentially is unlimited, right? So, risk reward. Now, of course, that's an extreme example, but the idea is everything you get into is not going to go up right away. But it kind of doesn't matter. You are implementing a plan, right? Now, in the stock market, you would go along the stock, and then you would write a put option to hedge against it. But the premium you pay in that option will probably negate the rally that you experienced, right? So you really need to know what you're doing, especially if you're using leverage in traditional trading. But if you do, you can also hedge effectively with traditional instruments, as well. So I guess the difference that you have with BVS is that your hedge is built in with mining, and you're not having to pay a premium or worry about a strike price or anything else, or the time devaluation. So that built-in mining effect. Look, this is the first time, this VVS is the first time that I've done this kind of crypto product. So this is an education for me, and this is a whole certain segment of the crypto industry, and I'm excited to learn about it because it is really exciting. So I gotta thank Rob. I'm always saying thank you to Rob because he's always teaching me stuff. I've got so thank you again, Rob. Yeah. So you know what? We've been chatting. Let's give the people a little break, and why don't we take a quick break and then polish this one off, Rob? What do you think?
Well, Ed, we covered a lot of ground, as we always do on these shows. DeFi is the future, and you were kind of talking right towards the end of the last segment about how to hedge in the old school stock world, writing covered calls, covered puts, and all those sorts of things. And there's many, many different ways you can actually do that. And there's a bunch of different ways you can do that in crypto as well. I like the idea of security, and I like the idea of giving yourself options and giving yourself outs as well. But equally, I like the idea of learning new things. And ladies and gentlemen, we might have covered a lot of ground here today on the show that you've never heard before, you've never understood before, you don't really know what these things are. So really encourage you to do your homework and do some research, and just scroll down and have a little look at the show notes, because I'll put some links to some of those places that we're talking about where you can get some incredible APYs, and you can get 59% on your USDT this afternoon if you really want to. Just do your KYC, give your details, and then transfer your USDTs across there. It's a very, very simple process. You can get involved in these things faster than you really think. And look, there's no excuse for not doing this. There's no excuse for not building an alternative plan. There's no excuse for not creating a crypto portfolio for yourself. And there's absolutely no excuse for you not to create a recurring income when it's never been so unbelievably simple ever in human history. And there's so many people around that can help you. There's me, there's Ed, there's the people in the crypto cartel. If you ask your friends and family, I promise you, if you look on YouTube and and reach out to some of the YouTubers that are out there. They'll point you in the right direction. They'll show you some stuff. They'll help you. People that are in crypto, that are doing crypto, are crypto evangelists. They love it. They see it as the alternative. They see it as a different opportunity to the existing corrupt and politically wrong cabal that controls the fiat system, and that essentially controls us all. And the reason that people in crypto are evangelists is because you can make money quickly. That's outside of the system, and you can do that ethically as well. And look, I hear people all the time, Ed, I don't know about you, man, but people complaining, I hate my job, I don't like this, I hate my life, I hate my business, I hate everything. They're really on the negative side of the ledger, but they'll go and do that for 2,000, 3,000 hours a year. They'll go and work 50, 60 hours a week in a job that they hate, but they won't take 5 to 10 hours to understand the nuance and intricacies of basic entry-level DeFi. And I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, if you spend the time with DeFi and then you talk to some people, because people that are in this space are willing to help you, they want to help you, and the communities around them are so strong. Every crypto product that's out there has got a Discord group, a Facebook group, a WhatsApp group, a Telegram group, a group for every single thing that you could possibly think of. And I promise you, ladies and gentlemen, if you come across something that looks really interesting to you, if you join those groups and you become part of those communities, the people there will help you. So there's absolutely no excuse for you not to create an alternative plan. Crypto is amazing because banks don't play in this space. They're just not allowed. They're not allowed. And DeFi allows us to become the bank, and you get to provide the liquidity via staking, via mining, becoming a node. There's so many ways that you can get into DeFi, to get into crypto, and to get into all of these ways to create recurring income. But none of that's going to matter unless you've got good fundamentals and you've taken the time to learn this process and taken the time to learn how to understand these things. And maybe just check your ego at the door. I don't know anything. I feel like I know about every day when I sit down to breakfast with a cup of coffee and my morning eggs, and I'm watching the latest update on crypto. I think, man, I don't know anything about that space. I don't know anything about what that guy is talking about. Oh my God. And I feel like there's so many gaps in my knowledge, but I also feel like I've come so far as well. And I always remind myself that, no, man, you know like so much more than most people, but I only know 0.0001% of what there is to know about crypto and the opportunities that are out there. And it's a never-ending process as well. So you got to check your ego at the door when you begin this journey, because there's a lot to learn and a lot to know, and you can never learn it all and know it all. But you can surround yourself with other people that can plug those gaps for you. What do you think, Ed? How are you going to sum it up, mate?
Well, what a great segue. I should, okay, I'll send you $10 in the mail. That was for setting me up so good. That is so good. When I was a trading instructor and I taught people how to trade, when I first started trading, I had to design the course from scratch, right? And in my enthusiasm, my manual was this big. It was a freaking doorstop, okay? Because I was trying to throw everything. I wanted people to know everything that I knew about trading. But then over time, I refined that course down to, they don't have to know that. They don't really have to know that, because it was too much for people to take in. And now my manual is this thick. It's 19 pages. But that's because I don't try to teach everything there is to know about trading. I mean, that's pretty much a lifelong pursuit, but I teach them what they need to know to trade and to get them up and running. And now I can teach people how to trade, in 90 minutes. Yes, the learning curve with cryptos can be crazy steep. But if you have some people around you that can answer your questions and help you navigate it all, then you can shortcut your path to success. Don't worry about learning everything, okay? Just you will learn things as you go. And I also think that successful people in the space, to be successful, you really need to have a plan. I see too many people, hitch their cart to the next big thing without having a money management plan in place at all, right? They say some guy on YouTube had a pretty jazzy, presentation on some shitcoin and it sounds good. That's it. You got to have a plan. You need to know what your free capital is, what you have to risk, and what the free capital you have to invest is. I mean, you got to think things through a little bit. And you also need strategies around your preservation, and your growth. Now, without a foundation in place, you're going to be shooting from the hip. And make no mistake, crypto is the Wild West. Okay, but it doesn't mean you need to act recklessly or take silly risks. And it's not about risking money you're prepared to lose either. I never want to lose money, ever. Just like you, Rob. I'm right there with you, man. I'll risk money, but that money will be from the profits of my recurring revenue. So I never lose my actual seed capital. And I always want to preserve what I'm building. Risk is a matter of perspective, right? And it takes time to develop this. It's kind of a muscle, right? But you need to develop this muscle in crypto. But with a little help, anyone can learn how to do it. Started to go down a rabbit hole again there. Sorry.
No, it's right on point, man. And I think it's a nice way to round out the show. The whole point of today's show was to share with people why they need an alternative plan and how they can do it. And we're saying to you that you can do that really quickly and efficiently here in crypto. You don't need a lot of money to get started. You don't need a lot of knowledge to get started either. But once you begin that journey and once you get on the path there to financial freedom and success with crypto, I promise you'll never look back. And it can happen faster than you ever believed possible. For me, I literally cannot believe what has happened to me. And I'm happy to share that with you, ladies and gentlemen, in an offline conversation. I don't think in a public YouTube video like that is the place to do that, but I'm more than happy to share my results because they have been absolutely life-changing. And it's all relative, right? It's relative to my life and how big that has been for me. But I think I'm a huge evangelist for crypto because it's been literally life-changing for me. And I want to share that with the world. I've got the ability to create these podcasts, this YouTube channel, this audience that we've created. I've got the ability, I feel like I've got a moral obligation to share this with the world. So if you want to know how Ed and I are doing it, ladies and gentlemen, please reach out to us and we'll share with you how simple it is to create recurring income. We'll share with you how easy it is to build wealth and how we're building a runway of time into the future for ourselves as well. We didn't start with a lot of money either. I didn't have a lot of capital to tip into this on the front end. I just tipped in what I could with an amount that I felt comfortable with that kind of got me a little bit excited, but not an amount that I'd lose sleep over at night. So before I knew it, I was patient. I just worked away diligently and did my thing. And here I am today. And I don't think I'll ever go back to what I was doing before. So I think that sums it up nicely, Ed, and you rounded that out beautifully, mate. If people want to connect with you, Ed, what would be the best way for them to reach out to you, mate?
Well, I'll be coming to a theater near you. No, just kidding. They can reach me at ed@thecryptocartel.io. Or, of course, they can check out my YouTube channel called Hey Ed, and I always have my email address there. And, of course, they can reach me at the Crypto Cartel, of course, 'cause I'm pretty active in there. And so I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. How about you, Rob?
Same email, just rob@thecryptocartel.io or over at the Cartel as well. And the links are all in the show notes. So if you want to connect with me directly outside of all of that, just reach out via Instagram at rob.brus77. As always, ladies and gentlemen, all of the links that we've been talking about and anything that we've mentioned here on the show can be found right in the show notes. So just scroll down if you're watching this on YouTube and just take a little peek at your phone if you're listening to this on a podcast. We've made it easy so you won't have to go poking around in Google at all. If you've got a question or some feedback for the show, you can reach out to Ed or myself and we'll get back to you. And if you like what you're hearing on today's show, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and subscribe right there on YouTube. And if you've got a moment, Ed and I would love a review in Apple Podcasts because that helps us out a whole bunch as well. Ed, do you have a parting comment for us? A final quote, mate. What have you got to close out the show for us today?
You don't need any chance to talk. Yeah. Sure do, Rob. Okay. So I've got one for DeFi. If it's both terrifying and amazing, then you should definitely pursue it. And I think that about rounded up perfectly.
Yeah, I reckon you're right on the money there. That's a good one. Let's get out of here. See you, mate.
See you, Robbie.